Today, we're here to discuss important new safety measures that we're putting in place at the federal level to help protect our public servants, our transit workers, who have been on the front lines every day during the pandemic, helping people get where they need to go in Baltimore, in Maryland, and around the country. And I want to introduce here, and you're going to be hearing from them in a minute, the president of ATU Local 1300, Mike McMillan, is right here. Thank you for your leadership. To the president of ATU Local 689, Raymond Jackson, thank you for your leadership. To the mayor, Brandon Scott, thank you for your leadership on so many important issues for this great city. To Councilman Ryan Dorsey, thank you for all that you're doing and for being here today. To my colleague in the House side, John Sarbanes, who's been working on many issues, including transit and transportation. Thank you for your leadership. Our colleagues, Congressman Mfume and Congressman Ruppersberger, have also been very active. They could not join us today, but I am very pleased that the captain of Team Federal Maryland, Ben Cardin, is with us, and thank you, Ben, Senator Cardin, for all your work. We're also going to hear from Darlene Knox, a transit worker of 20 years who is going to share her story about the challenges and safety risks that transit workers undergo every day in doing their jobs. And I want to thank all the ATU members who are here today, who make this city run. And we need to be there for you to make sure you have the resources and protection that you need. Now, we were successful at the federal level in passing the infrastructure modernization bill, and President Biden signed that into law last November. And my colleagues here, Senator Cardin and Congressman Sarbanes, were at the front of that effort to get that done. That legislation will bring $7 billion in infrastructure modernization money to Maryland over the next 5 years, and we'll invest a lot of it here in the Baltimore area. It also represented an historic increase in funds for transit, the largest increase in funding for transit ever in a United States federal government infrastructure bill, including $1.8 billion that will come to Maryland over the next 5 years for transit. Yeah. And I want to thank all of the people here and all of our transit workers and my colleagues for getting that important bill over the finish line. But we wanted to make sure that as we provided that additional investment in transit and infrastructure, we would also take measures to help not only keep the systems running, but help increase the safety of the men and women who go to work every day on those transit systems. And I want to talk a little bit about how important that is. In October of 2020, Marcus Parks was fatally shot after someone got in an argument with him as they boarded his Southeast Baltimore bus route. Last January, about a year ago, Frankie Duckett was shot and killed in Northeast Baltimore after he asked somebody boarding the bus to put on a face mask. Just last August, Baltimore City lost MTA bus driver Isaac Caldwell, who was shot while waiting to get to work. These are Marylanders who were going about their jobs, doing what we ask them to do every day, to try to get people to and from their homes, to and from work, and they were killed in their line of duty. And our hearts go out to them and their families to this day. In addition to those who've been killed, there are others who are assaulted. This is a huge issue, an epidemic around the country. And if you look at the statistics, you'll find that every day throughout the United States of America, in urban areas and rural areas and suburban areas, transit workers are assaulted. And so as part of the infrastructure bill, we took measures to try to change that, to improve the security of our transit workers. Back in 2018, I worked with colleagues on a bipartisan basis to introduce a bill to improve transit worker safety. And with my colleague, Senator Cardin and Congressman Sarbanes and others, we were able to get that measure included in the infrastructure modernization bill. What it says is that for cities like Baltimore, of over 200,000 people, when they get their federal transit money, they have to allocate a certain amount of those funds to increasing the safety of their transit workers. For example, they can put up protective barriers in buses, or they can work on de-escalation training. There's flexibility in exactly what measures they take, but it has to be designed to help improve safety. And it also would allow them to take measures to improve the visibility out of the windshields to protect pedestrian safety. So pedestrian safety and transit worker safety, those are both measures that these funds can be used for, set aside for. We also call in this legislation for more reporting, because assaults on transit workers are underreported across the country. Let me just give you some examples of things that do not trigger a reporting requirement right now. A transit worker can get a broken nose. A transit worker can be hospitalized for 24 hours. A transit worker can get first-degree burns, and none of those assaults, something we would all understand as an assault, are required to be reported under the current FTA rules. So we need to collect the data so that we can take additional measures and use those monies I talked about in a smart, targeted way to improve transit safety, because nobody should have to go to work and be put at risk in this way. And one of the other things we included in this infrastructure bill, and we again worked very closely on this as a delegation, was a provision to put the Baltimore Red Line back into play. We wanted to make it clear that we're not giving up on the Red Line, and in Maryland, with a future governor and a future General Assembly, we signaled in this bill that we're going to renew that effort. And that, of course, will mean additional transit workers, and the measures we're taking for transit worker safety are really important to protect them and people around the country.